Next, a day before the Pentagon releases its criminal probe of Pat Tillman's friendly fire death, I'll speak live with an Army Ranger who was there that day in Afghanistan as we continue Outside the Lines.
Brought to you by Fidelity Investments. Smart move.
I don't think that the American public should think that, the people on the ground really tried to cover this whole thing up, because we really had nothing to do with what was going on after Pat was killed.
Everybody who was in the platoon, there was no conspiracy. It was a horrific event that happened. There was no pulling it back. We were upset. We were told to keep our mouths shut.
Pat Tillman's platoon mates told Outside the Lines last year that they and everyone in their immediate chain of command knew soon thereafter that Tillman had been killed by friendly fire in Afghanistan. Tomorrow afternoon, the Department of Defense will release the results of its fourth investigation into the death of the former Arizona Cardinal and how it was handled by the Army. Reports indicate this weekend that 9 officers, among them 4 generals, will be cited to accept responsibility for their errors and the way they handled the news of Tillman's death in 2004. Some of these officers are currently retired. One of the generals is a 3-star general. Indications are that while responsibility may be assigned, no major misconduct will be cited. Brad Jacobson was a sergeant in the Rangers. He was a mortar man assigned to and attached to Pat Tillman's platoon that day 3 years ago, and he joins us on the phone. Brad, how soon after that horrible day back in Afghanistan 2004, after that firefight, was it apparent to everyone in the unit that Pat Tillman had been killed by friendly fire?
Well, by the time everybody in the platoon was sure of the friendly fire incident, it would have had to have been within a few days, within just a day or two after the shooting.
And then, of course, as you evacuated out of that area and went back to base camp, as far as the chain of command, the officers overlooking your unit, how soon before they were in your immediate chain of command did you have a feeling they pretty much knew it was friendly fire?
Well, I mean, just like any death in the Army, there's going to be an investigation done almost immediately after it happens. As soon as the platoon was back in the rear, several officers began an investigation that very day, and so to the best of my knowledge, it would be that most of the officers within the immediate chain of command highly suspected within a day or two after the shooting itself.
When you learned that when less than 2 weeks after Pat had been killed, of course, he was remembered at a memorial service that was nationally televised, and in the course of that there was a eulogy. The explicit statement was made based on information provided by the Army to the eulogist, who was a Navy SEAL, that he had been killed by enemy fire. When you learned that was the circumstance under which this memorial service had taken place, what was your reaction?
Well, I didn't actually get to see footage of the memorial service until the Outside the Lines presentation was given a couple of months ago. But upon seeing that was the first time I had seen it, and I was absolutely appalled that they would have given him that with such conviction to read at a memorial service when they knew something else was going on behind his back,
You've heard people talk about the fact that there had been, quote, cover-ups or a whitewash having to do with this, that it took about a month for his family to finally officially be told by the Army that it appeared it was friendly fire. When you hear those terms, cover-up and whitewash, what's your reaction?
Well, from a internal standpoint, such as like inside the platoon or even immediate chain of command around the platoon, I wouldn't say there was so much a cover-up gone on that avenue, but as you get higher in the ranks of the Army, it's definitely not inconceivable that, they see something like this happens and they know that it's going to get publicly shown, and they probably didn't want to create such a bad name for themselves. So you got to understand that there's probably going to be some cover-up and some whitewash going through their heads, and, maybe at the time they thought they could get away with it. I'm not going to go any further than that just because the report hasn't been released yet, so I don't want to, burn any witches yet.
But the fact that, according to widespread news reports from multiple sourcing, 9 officers, 4 of them general officers, will be cited for their responsibility. When you hear the Army coming to that and the Pentagon coming to that conclusion, what's your reaction?
Well, yeah, no, it was about time, that something happened like that to the people that were indirectly involved. Obviously, like we all know, the directly responsible parties were punished within the platoon. but nothing happened to the indirectly responsible people. You know, the people who made the calls to split us up, the people that made the, you know, the calls after the fact. You know, to give the Silver Star, to do the lateral promotion to corporal. Nothing happened to those guys yet, and it's, you know, like I said, it's about time something happened to somebody that was indirectly responsible for what happened afterwards.
Brad Jacobson, we appreciate you taking the time this morning. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next up, the sports scourge, the staph infection that can threaten the lives of athletes all the way down to
They told me what the worst case scenario could be if it gets out of control, amputation here, or possibly if you don't catch it in time, you could die from staph infection.
outside opinion on a locker room danger and its grave next. The share to athletes from rec leagues all the way up to the pros. Our outside opinion included a number of emails from the parents of youngsters infected with the strain, MRSA or MRSA, and also included this letter from Martin in Florida. During a routine slide at a softball game, a friend of mine scraped his leg. It was a pretty big scrape, but he's a man. He can take it. Also, like many of us, when his leg began hurting and sores forming, he did not want to go to the doctor. That was a week ago. Today I'm going to his wake, and tomorrow I will be attending his funeral. He had a staph infection that ultimately took his life. Online, click the ESPN drop-down menu and then click Outside the Lines on our interactive page. You can send us email. You can sign up for our daily program alert. You can vote in our weekday polls and to make your opinion heard on the air. That's our toll-free voicemail, 866-ESPN-OTL. Heading towards the sports reporters. Final word next.